Your health, your way, your community. Make the change. Join the movement.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Academy. Today we're talking the Ley Love Down project, and we've got Rachel Vaughan. Welcome, Rachel. How are you?
I'm really good. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Good. Now, this is a topic that I'm excited to hear more about because I've heard so much about ley lines, and I've heard about song lines when the Indigenous talk about that. And I get the concept that there's these special places, but I personally don't feel it or see it or understand it. So I'm looking forward to the going through this and understanding a little bit more, because I guess we all know that there's special places, but we don't really understand why. So where would you like to start? Do you want to start with a bit of an introduction of yourself and how you got into all of this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So for those who don't know me, I've been doing interviews for about 5 years now, since 2018. And the reason why I came out to do to be, public speaking was because I had some pretty awful things happen in childhood, and authorities refused to investigate. My abuser was my father. And it was complicated stuff. So part of it involved certain rituals in spaces, ley lines crossings, where the portal spaces are, outdoor type rituals, which weren't very nice. Um, I've spoken about that at length, and I finally got a victim of crime payment from the government to acknowledge that I had been abused. The police in South Australia, the suppression orders, there's a lot going on to sort of stop the truth from coming out about what happens to children specifically. And this is a worldwide thing. So my passion now is to try and ameliorate, balance out some of the dreadful frequencies that have been placed into these energetic spaces. From my understanding, and my belief system, the Earth is a living entity. That's why it has an atmosphere. That's why everything grows here. We're not a dead planet, we're an alive planet. And we've got companies like BlackRock trying to change that. So I have this desire now to sort of not only share with people that ley lines exist, we can see them, there's scientific evidence to prove that, but they're actually very important. And there are otherworldly entities that we exist with on this planet that a lot of people would prefer don't exist or are scared of because of various reasons. Organized religion seems to take away a lot of the magic from life, unfortunately. And I'm not having a go at Christians or anything like that. Obviously, you've got some, beautiful people in those organizations, but organized religion is there basically to take from the individual their ability to communicate with these otherworldly entities, with God, with their angels, guides, whatever. So we can actually pick up on these entities very easily when we're out in nature. And you would call the entities out in the ley lines are mostly the fairy entities, and we're not talking Tinkerbell Disney types. That is one kind, which is called a sylph. But there are many different entities that will actually show themselves. So these are discarnate entities that don't have a physical body, but in order to communicate with humans, they will show themselves in humanoid features in the landscape. So you might see a face in a tree or in a bush, or in patterns on the ground, in the clouds, all these different ways that they communicate with us. Sometimes it'll be animal manifestations, sometimes it'll be humanoid, so that we would relate to it. What I've noticed is, because I've been photographing ley lines for the last 12 years now, it's been longer than 10. I've been talking about it for a couple of years now, so publicly, so it's about 12 years. I've noticed that there is a very unusual correlation, well, not unusual now that I understand it, but a very high correlation between seeing these humanoid apparitions within the ley lines and not seeing them in other spaces. So ley lines are geomagnetic frequencies. They are 3D linear concentrations of light and sound frequency, according to Rory Duff, who's a bit of a hero of mine. I'll share some of his stuff in a little while. There is a huge amount of information about ley lines. There's a reasonable amount of congruity with what people understand about it. Basically, they're magnetic frequencies. So where you get areas of geostress, so where you get places where mountainous places, or where there's any kind of stress underground, you'll get these frequencies as well. Some people call them telluric currents, as was described in the bio for this talk. They are 3D linear concentrations. So by 3D, I mean that they are three-dimensional in three-dimensional space. So they create tunnels through the landscape. So that's what a ley line is. It's a tunnel through the landscape. Rory Duff explains, and this is the book that I really recommend reading this book. It's a guidebook, a guide to ley lines, earth energies, nodes, and large vortexes. So the name again is Rory Duff. He has a website. He has a chart in there where he actually describes in linear terms in size or inches and feet type terms how wide a lot of these ley lines are. So some are very small, a few inches across, some are feet across. The ones that I photographed the most on the south coast of South Australia seem to be about 2 meters across. And when you stand within a ley line, if you look at it, you can actually start to see beautiful, perfect circles in front of you. If you stand on the side of a ley line, you won't see any of it. You won't see the circles. But if you stand within them, so if you stand on a path in nature, you will see these beautiful circles in the landscape. Often I'll photograph them and then I'll do a 180. So I'll photograph it in front of me. I'll turn around so my back is to where I was just looking at this beautiful circle in the natural area, and I'll photograph in the other direction just to see if I'm seeing the leys in both directions. What happens is that plants and trees don't like to grow within these spaces. So, if you go out into nature, you go into a native forest. Endemic forests show this much more clearly than those that have been raised to the ground and then trees grown in rows. You won't get that sort of phenomena as obviously in there. But these trees and plants, they don't want to grow within the leys. So the leys tend to travel along the ground. Trevor Y gave a masterclass for Ley Love Dam where he explained that they can also go underground. They can also be way above ground, and that's where you get your tumps and mounds and things over in the UK, where the ancient people were actually building up the ground to get to the portal spaces or the ley lines that were higher above the ground to do whatever they wanted to do in there. It's also a marker to let people know if you've got a crop, if you're trying to grow a crop and you've got a big portal where ley lines cross on your land, you put a tump or a mound there to show people don't bother trying to grow something there, because plants and trees just really do not like to grow in those spaces. If they do grow in those spaces, they will be somewhat tortured looking, mangled, have weird rounded boughs and limbs. They don't seem to like it. It's an interesting phenomena. There's been scientific testing of plants like tomatoes. And a tomato, tomatoes are very pungent. So if you upset or touch a tomato, it will start to give off a very strong scent. They've actually done tests where they've gone and they've cut the tomato plant, and they've done it reasonably regularly. And before the person even gets near the plant, after a while, it will actually start to react and send out this pungent aroma because it knows it's coming. It knows it's about to be attacked. So plants are sentient. Trees are sentient. They are aware and conscious. It's pretty horrifying when you realize, even if you don't eat animals, plants are aware of what's going on as well. Nothing really wants to die. So I believe plants and trees, it might be out of respect also that they don't grow within the ley lines. So if you have a property and it's very wooded and it's got a lot of plants, and you cut through a path, you will have to maintain that. You'll have to keep going through with a brush cutter and maintaining it and cutting it. But when you go out into nature and you have these natural paths, these ley lines, but the trees and plants don't grow within it, you don't have to maintain it. It's naturally there. So I've thought about this at length. Is it because of the footfall of people walking along those paths for long periods of time? Does it compact the soil and make it so it's impossible for the trees and plants to grow in those spaces? Well, no, because you can see areas where there's thick asphalt and grass will grow up through it. So it's because of there's another force there that's preventing the trees and plants from growing in there, whether it's by choice or whether it's because they just don't like the frequency. And I think it's a combination of both, because I've photographed and I've got, I teach a course, and so many course members have shared with me pictures of trees that just look really like they're very not happy in these spaces. Amazing man who's considered the grandfather of these theories, a guy called Alfred Watkins. That's his book. It's called The Old Straight Track. I thoroughly recommend that. He's got a whole chapter on marked trees. So the trees will typically grow around, or they are used as a marker for a ley line. And these are in ancient times. It's a little insulting that he's considered the grandfather of this theory, because original people for millennia have known about these lines. So just to clarify, ley lines are these beautiful corridors of this incredible frequency that when they go through nature, they create a path of least resistance for us to walk through, because the trees and plants don't like to grow within them, and animals use them as well. Where they cross, where you get a crossing point of multiple of these ley lines, so one will cross over the other, you'll get a sphere of energy in that space that creates a clearing. So if you're walking on a natural path and suddenly you're in a clearing, it's a good idea to sort of start taking photographs or have a look around you, do a 360 in that spot and photograph all around, because you might notice that there's actually another ley coming across there and causing this portal space. And they're the spaces that the Romans used to put their ritual stones in and do their sacrificial stuff in. These spaces are where, people have had temples and sacred sites for millennia again. And I've got some shares that I'll show to explain all of that as well. But that just gives you a bit of a rundown, bit of a long rundown, but a rundown.
No, it's great. It's really fascinating. Rachel, you spoke about the fact that they use these areas to do ceremonial things, or and I say they, those that are tapping into potentially bad things. My question would be, how important is it for us to also utilize them for good things, to start putting those messages back through? And what is the connection between those ley lines in the energetic sense and the spiritual realms onto communication? And does it, I guess, emphasize the message that's being created there, hence the reason that they're doing it? So how does that connect between the two?
So the ley lines are like the meridians of the earth. They're part of her soul frequency. So when you have certain secret societies who want to have absolute control, they want to bring in AI, they want to have machine bodies, they don't want life on Earth, they want death. And so that's why I mentioned before the company that seems to own everything with the word black and rock in it. What they've been doing for a extremely long period of time is infusing the Earth's ley lines and meridian, her chakra points as well, because there are different versions of ley lines, as in some are more powerful than others. So where the most powerful ley lines are, they're called dragon lines, and where they cross, you get chakra points on the earth. So where they cross over land, they're considered the earth's chakra points. So those that want to have control and power here will do all sorts of horrible things in those spaces to imbue this negative frequency, to program the Leys and the portal spaces and the chakras of the earth for misery and torture and death, basically. It is extremely important that we now, recognizing the importance of these spaces, and, up until Alfred Watkins' time and even after that, it was argued that these spaces didn't exist. This is how desperately they don't want us to know about these spaces. So my project now, Lay Love Down with Ben Hawkes, is to encourage people out into these spaces and to sing or to play beautiful music or anything that's harmonious. Banging sticks in Australia, the original people would knock sticks together and make beautiful sounds that way. Didgeridoos, anything that is a harmonious frequency with the intent of healing and balancing the Leys, the Earth's energy system, it's extremely powerful. And we just need enough people to do that. So we've already got a fairly a beautiful group of souls that are doing this work. The more that can do it, the better, which is why I'm talking so much about it at the moment and doing these presentations. We can win the energetic war that we are actually currently in quite succinctly and easily. No weapons involved. It's just through intent and beautiful harmonic frequencies.
And is it your understanding that the good outpowers the bad? So therefore, if we come along and we take control of those, that it doesn't matter what horrific things have been done there, that the good will always overpower that?
We have the earth on our side. She doesn't want to die. So, and I really do believe that is the end goal. So when you look at, people who go out into these spaces and conduct these horrific rituals, when somebody or something dies, it opens a portal. Death opens a portal. So these crossing points of these ley lines are, even though I mentioned before, I described them as three-dimensional, what I meant as in taking up space, they are three-dimensional, but in actual fact, they are fifth dimensional frequency. So fifth dimensional frequency is, so the fifth dimension is like a train station, and all the other dimensions come off that fifth dimension. And the ley lines are our interface from a third dimensional perspective with all those other dimensions. So where you have ley lines, this is why you see all these amazing otherworldly entities showing themselves. It's often called the green man. There's lots of different names for it. They'll show themselves to point out how important these spaces are, but it's also because they inhabit those spaces. They exist there because they're interdimensional. And a lot of these entities don't feel comfortable in the third dimension, but they can handle being in the fifth dimensional frequency of the ley line as it traverses the third dimensional space. Where the ley lines cross over these portal spaces are very, it's like there's a bunch of doorways to all the other dimensions, and they all come off there. So when someone takes an animal or a person and sacrifices them in that space, it opens a doorway through the horrible, black magic rubbish that they do. They can invert. So Satanists are very much into inversion. And instead of, when you kill a child, an angelic realm would normally open, a doorway to an angelic realm would normally open. They can invert it to open up a dark portal, and then they call in something that they want to have power through. And these idiots that do these, I know I witnessed this as a child, these idiots who do these rituals think that they are actually controlling these entities, and that is not the case. So then they become controlled. These humans that do these stupid things, their lives are over. They won't have control of their life ever again. And that's basically why they know that when they pass, though, so these humans that do these horrific things will end up going to hell at some point. So they try to then create vehicles that will keep them here forever on a soul level. So they'll create, AI type, transhumanists. This is what the agenda's about. They want to have a vehicle here forever because they don't want to go to where they belong when they pass. So it's a horrible. I mean, I actually feel quite sorry for some of these people because they're just incredibly stupid. That's the world that we're living in.
Yeah, Rachel, I actually came to understand a lot of this by looking into the anti-child trafficking space. So that was my opening to that, and then opening to spiritual. So I was actually looking at the evil to then see, okay, well, if they're doing that. So I became very close friends with Fiona Barnett, and there was a guy called Isaac Cappy, and we did stuff over in Arizona. But that opened up this idea of what they were doing, and the sacrifice and all of that. So I don't have the personal experience in that, except being passed on a lot of these stories, and that, along with the idea when I started studying that Satan was the angel of music, that became part of the reason of doing the festival that we recently did, and the idea of us overpowering these things with love. One of the messages that came out was that the solutions was going to come from first light. So hence the reason on our poster we had the first light, which is the Byron Lighthouse. It's the easternmost point. And so it was based along these ideas that we can overcome things by putting out this powerful energy. And when you were there, we had grandmother Malara, and we had some others that could see the entities coming through, the ancestors coming through, and very happy. And you could feel this different feeling. It was a different energetical feeling that, for those who were there, they could feel it. It was amazing. So, to combat what's going on, and they're also attacking the idea of having festivals. So they're trying to shut down the ones that have got that genuine feeling, which is a gathering of people, and forcing it into those that we don't. So I guess my question from that is, how important is it that when we gather and we do these types of things, that we gather in such a way, and if we can also do them on ley lines, how much are we doing good to overcome the bad?
It's extremely powerful. So again, you said something so intelligent there about, the dark having the airwaves, the sound waves. So music, the reason why that is being said about Satan having, power over music is because demonic entities use auditory channels. So this is why and angelics always use visual. So when you've got the auditory channels being tapped into, you're going to have them using music at 440 hertz. The healing frequency is 432 hertz, 528 hertz. 440 hertz is what you'll see with most of the mainstream music that we get nowadays. This is why people suffer from, schizophrenia, which is not really a diagnosis. When you have somebody who's plagued by demonic entities that has a series of attachments or even just one, they will hear a voice that tells them to do things, usually horrible things to themselves or others, and will just denigrate them constantly because they use the auditory channels. And this is why you can get some people who can have incredible information from the other side, but it comes at great cost because the auditory channels, someone, a demonic entity can just they can lay it out, details, just like a conversation. Whereas the angelics always have to use visions, you have to use interpretation, you have to understand, get feelings with it. It's not all laid out for you because, quite frankly, we're not supposed to. If we were just having everything laid out for us, which no point being here. We've come here for lessons. So yeah, these people they will get that information very clearly from the auditory channels. Yeah.
And what about the animal side of things? Is things like the Yeti and Abominable Snowman and these types of um, stories, because it's the same type of image but in different locations.
Yeah.
Are these visible often around these sorts of ley lines? Is this what these entities sort of are?
Yeah, great question. You know your stuff. So yeah, absolutely. So ancient peoples have described this for millennia as well. So where you get the ley lines crossing in these portal spaces and even along the Leys, you will get cryptid type sightings. So in some ways, I believe that the portals are also timeless. So I've had an experience of seeing megafauna, which are, Australian megafauna were enormous marsupials. And I've had an experience of seeing them in a place outside of Port Elliot. I saw a mega, I don't know what they call them, the massive wombat and a snub-nosed kangaroo. And we're sort of staring at each other through this portal space, like, what the? They were as freaked out as I was. And then I looked up went to the library and checked out, was there megafauna in that area and were there wombats and roos? And yeah, they were, and that same snub-faced kangaroo, like what I saw. And that was about 50,000 years previous. So it can be a timeless space as well. So the question is, were cryptids or are we seeing back in time? Or are they, interdimensional entities? I think maybe a combination of two, maybe some of the dragon sightings that people have had, apart from obviously not dinosaurs. But some of those dragon sightings and things could also be people seeing, they could be in a portal space and seeing back in time to dinosaur times as well. It's fascinating. I mean, these spaces are so powerful. No wonder there's been so much to try and make us believe that they don't exist because the secret societies don't want everybody to know about it because we can then go and change it and fix it and heal it.
Yeah. Cal Washington, who I work with at Empower Movement, he tells a really interesting story of going outside Buckingham Palace and actually closing a portal.
Wow.
And it was this just so many entities. He said like he could feel and he could see all of this stuff. There was other people praying at the same time, but he ended up going accidentally to this location. He was just looking for drumsticks, and came across this thing, and then it was just a massive portal. So how do these portals, I guess, get used by these bad entities? Because you do hear about people shutting down or closing off some of the bad portals. How does that differ to a ley line, or is it the same thing? What's a portal compared to a ley line?
So I should qualify that a lot of other ley line hunters, so to speak, call them vortexes. So where the leys come, so you'll have a ley running in one direction, a ley will cross over that ley in a different direction. So you have a crossing point, and that's where you'll have a vortex of energy. Where the leys cross, they will create this swirling energy. I call them portals because I see them as three-dimensional spheres in the landscape. So I'm not sure. I can't remember your question now. Sorry.
Just the difference between what they would say is a portal And
Yeah.
like, do we, because some people talk about shutting down these portals that are being used by the evil entities. So I'm assuming it's like a super highway of effect of them being able to travel. So is it the fact that we have to shut them down? Is it the fact that we have to, if they're being used in that way, or is it the fact that we overcome them with love and use them for good? Like, what's the sort of, I guess, end goal of those types of places?
So to me, it would be, I know that you can move them to a degree. The layers and the portals that they can be moved. The frequency can definitely be changed. Personally, I think it would be best to just shift the frequency, balance it out so that it's not negative. And the interesting thing is, if you read Rory Duff's book, the guidebook that I mentioned earlier, he talks about Hartman Curry lines, which are a smaller version of ley line, that they are negatively affecting over long periods. So some of these lines are negatively affecting just because of the frequency that they carry. So you wouldn't want to live or sleep in one of these lines for a long period of time. But some are imbued with negative frequencies intentionally to make people sick. And it's interesting, you see a lot of power lines seem to run along in the same spaces where ley lines are as well. And that can have an effect, a negative effect on the ley lines. Personally, I think it would be more important to get out, into those spaces. If there is negative frequency in that ley or portal, get a choir out there, get them to sing with positive intent. When people sing together, their heartbeats harmonize. So you've got this sense of community, and the choral music, because it's such a singing in a group, as long as you're enjoying it, is an incredibly beautiful experience. So that would be a way to clear that space. People could dance in the space. Again, the intent behind it being the most important thing. You can do a ritual and do dance, and that's bad, like a negative one. But if you go out there with the intent that your movement, that your song, that the music that you play at high frequencies, 432, 528 hertz, has a healing effect and a balancing effect to take away the negative energy, it will have that effect. We are incredibly powerful. Our intent is our greatest and most powerful tool.
When I spent a lot of time chatting to Fiona Barnett, she spoke about the fact that she was chosen because of her abilities as a young child. She had these abilities. And my question to you is, you mentioned that you had similar experiences maybe. Do you think that you had something that you were chosen for, as in you had the ability to, she spoke about left and right hemispheres working in a higher IQ and these types of things, but it also opened her up to be able to do things on the bad side of what they were hoping to do. But for you, do you think that, I guess, those experiences has set you up to be able to see things that perhaps others may find it harder to see? Or is there anything positive that's come from those experiences that's allowed you to experience things differently in this way?
Well, they've made me a pretty powerful weapon to work against them. So, you know, I'm an intense optimist. I like to turn things around. So I mean, my father chose my mother, I believe, because she had central heterochromia, which is a particular eye color. And it's well known that people with this particular eye color have psychic ability. My mother's family side had incredible ability. My father's side has abilities. So I think he chose my mother to breed with. I have half siblings who also have central heterochromia. So I think he chose their mother also for the same purpose. So, and then he handed me over for experimentation through the MK Ultra program. I was utilised in rituals to communicate with these entities because either the adults around me they couldn't pick up on these otherworldly entities that they were calling up, or they didn't want to take the risk because it's terrifying and very dangerous. And I'm sure many, many children don't survive it because these darker entities are being pulled onto the surface for these rituals. They don't like it. They get very, very angry. So, a lot of the adults didn't want to have to deal with that. So they put a child out there to do it. And they don't care. Children are expendable to them. Um, so I was taught a lot of things. I was opened up in a very unethical way psychically, but obviously it was already in the family line anyway. Um, I think that anybody can see a ley line if they just learn the techniques. It's not difficult. But there are interesting things like there's a tile that I'll show in a minute that shows that some people are dichromats, trichromats, or tetrachromats. So some people see different ranges of color. And sometimes I think with the ranges of color, because I'm a tetrachromat, I can see the wider range of colors. I might be picking up on different frequencies with the colors because of the ley lines interacting with the space that might make these things more obvious to me. But 25% of people are tetrachromats. So even if that's the case, that there's 25% of people who could still see what I can see.
So that's a great lead into then how do we spot these? So, and I think you've got a presentation I think that you can share a little bit with us, but I'm fascinated in how we can start going out and spotting these and potentially doing some things to fight back and in a positive way.
Beautiful. What's my time frame, Dave? Do you have a limit?
No, so we've got another hour to go, really. And so, probably half an hour if you wanted to show that stuff and then open up half an hour in questions. But if you go over, that's fine as well.
All right. Okay. I have got a lot of stuff, but I'll skip through some. So, all right. So I'll share screen.
Thank you.
All right. So just to start off with, these are some of the main ley lines that you might see on sort of maps and things if you look up ley line. And I'll go through these reasonably quickly. As you can see, there are many of them. This is really interesting. This is Wilpena Pound in Australia. So beautiful man called Robert Jameson has written a book called The Barley to Bairnsdale Alignment, and he describes Wilpena Pound as part of the sacral chakra of the earth, Uluru being part of that as well. And this is the Barley to Bairnsdale alignment. So this is one of the dragon lines that cross Australia. So I thought this would be a good example because we've got a lot of Australians in here today. This is an original people's version of where the ley lines are and where they all cross. There's another map of this that's actually black and white that actually shows Uluru, and it's got a different color to sort of indicate how significant it is, because where the dragon lines cross over Australia, there are two that cross over. They cross exactly over Uluru, which is a massive rock in the centre of Australia. Brilliant map. This was shared with me. So this is the Becker-Hagen's grids. So again, ley lines everywhere. And it's amazing how they all striate out from Wilpena Pound, which is this big basin in South Australia. This is the book I was mentioning before with Rory Duff. It might have been mirrored before, you might not have been able to read it. And so these are some of the dragon lines here. I'd love to show the ones that cross over Australia, but I don't want to do anything against copyright. So there were 6 pairs of dragon lines up until 2012. In 2017, another one appeared. Another one appeared in 2018, and another one appeared in 2019. So we had this huge influx of really high frequency ley lines just before all the shit hit the fan with the last 4 years of crap that we went through. So they knew this was coming. The secret societies knew that we were going to come into a time where people were going to wake up big time. And ascend on the soul level as well. I'm seeing massive ascension process going on at the moment. So we got the last 4 years of nightmare. So that's Uluru. Just beautiful. I'm going there in December for the Cosmic Consciousness Conference. I've got a bit of a shameless plug at the end of the presentation for that as well. So that's okay. Again, Robert Jameson's work. So Uluru is part of the sacral chakra of the earth. So Australia is like the sacral chakra. There are many different chakra points on the planet. This is just a description of Alfred Watkins, again, who's considered the grandfather of the ley line theory. He could actually see the ley lines also. So there's a lot of references to these being visible. It's not just that he saw them like glowing wires all over the surface of the county, and then he wrote his book. And it's 1925 published, by the way. Whenever a church is built, whenever a Freemasonic temple or lodge is built, whenever an arena is built, a Freemason will go out with a sighting rod and sight a ley line. So they will not build them unless they're on a ley line or a powerful crossing of ley lines. So this is what happens. So these are visual terms. This is just a Natural Library of Medicine article on cryptochromes. So just like insects and birds, human beings have light receptors called flavor protein light receptors, which are magnetoreceptors called cryptochromes, we can see ley lines, and it's a scientific fact, so it can't be denied. And it's heavily expressed in the human retina. So we know that insects and birds navigate using ley lines. We can see them also. This is the proof. What's really interesting is there's a gentleman called Robin Baker who has been academically trolled for studying this, absolutely trolled. And I've got to quote him on this because it just says so much. So he says, magnetoreception is just one element in an integrated navigational armory that involves all the available sensors and uses a wide range of environmental information. So it's not just our eyes. I've got a friend, Alex, that I go out with, and she will feel the ley lines before I see them. Then I'll start taking photographs and having a look around me. What's happened with Robin is he's just been attacked. So, and some of these academic papers that have been put out to try and disrupt his studies, even though I mean, we've got cryptochromes. They're heavily expressed in the retina, so we have them. Of course, we can see ley lines. But he's actually, I just want to quote him again. He says there's a stark contrast between positive results and negative interpretations of his studies, and it remains unexplained feature of the literature on human magnetoreception. These secret societies do not want us to know this stuff. They don't want it. Number one, they don't want us to think that ley lines even exist. They want to make it fantasy, fairy tale rubbish. And secondly, you know, if you put anything out there that's actually going to prove it, they will go you. This is what I was talking about before. So this was shared in my Telegram group. So depending on the number of colors that you can see in this tile, will denote whether or not you're a dichromat, trichromat, or tetrachromat. So if you see up to 20 colors here, and I don't expect everybody to be able to do that right now because I won't be able to count, but if you can see up to 20 colors, you're considered a dichromat. If you can see between 20 and 32, you're a trichromat. And if you can see 33 colors up to 39 colors, you're a tetrachromat. I can see 33. Obviously, some people can see even more than that. So it just depends on how many different colors you can see in that range. If you're a tetrachromat, you can see what bees can see. So, you know, everything on the planet has a different range of vision. So that just sort of explains some of it. All right, so I wanted to just do an introduction into pareidolia. So this is a term that's been used to basically relegate any kind of vision that you might have of a humanoid or animal features in the landscape, in plants and trees, to relegate it as just some sort of nebulous stimulus. It's nothing, doesn't mean anything, it's not significant. This is so insulting to all of the original people in the world who have seen significance in these entities showing themselves in nature for millennia. And this is just another way that, you know, again, the secret societies know all about this stuff. They don't want anybody else to know. So they'll put out, you know, stupid stuff like this. It's called pareidolia or apophenia. Excuse me, I can't even say the word apophenia as well. And it's, you know, we're supposed to be listening to our original people, are we not? So, you know, this is insulting. And this is, again, you know, psychology, science will try to dumb down our ability to see these sorts of things, even to the point where they will put fluoride in the water to stop your pineal gland from working, so you will not be able to pick up on these things as easily. And again, I've said this so many times, but I'll say it again. The Nazis were putting fluoride in the water in the concentration camps, and they were not worried about their teeth. So you've got to think, why would they be doing that? Okay, so this is a depiction of the Green Man. This is called the quintessential Green Man figure. This is from a BBC documentary that I share in my course. So the Green Man is, you know, a term for these otherworldly entities that will show themselves in the ley lines and in the portal spaces. There are so many depictions in churches, it's ridiculous. So when the Catholic Church went into the Roman pagan areas, they would actually depict the Green Man within the church. Otherwise, the pagans would never have joined the Catholic Church and been converted, so to speak. So, you know, even the Catholic Church uses these images a great deal. This is another one also from a church, another one from a church. So, you know, again, foliate features that there's an entity or an intelligence communicating through nature. This came up just recently. This was on September 2024. So again, there's a face in this tree. Trees will show these entities a lot. So I won't, obviously we can't read the whole thing. So this was shared in my group by one of my Telegram chat members. So this is from Tony. So Tony found this when he was reasonably, or he or she, I'm not sure if Tony's a male or female, reasonably young, and has kept it throughout life because it's so significant. Obviously, you can see humanoid features there. But then it gets even more interesting. So this is one of my course members. She showed me this picture, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. So if you have a bit of a close up, you can see there's an eye there, a nose, lips, chin, bit of hair. So it gets more and more obvious. Obviously, with things like bark, it's not going to be there for forever. They can be quite ephemeral. But these are the more sort of static versions of the green man, in nature, because the bark will last a certain amount of time. I took this photograph in Belair National Park. Before I shared it, I did not notice that this face is actually staring into a portal. I'll show it to you in a moment. But eyes, big nose, it's a real grandfather tree, downturned mouth, big chin, knobbly cheek. So you've got a face staring into what is actually a portal. So this is an example of a portal. So where ley lines cross, they'll create a sphere of energy. There are not that many ley lines that are this big. I mean, there are ley lines that are this big, but they're just it's reasonably, it's not as common. So I've got a comparison for those who can pick it up. When you look at your pictures in thumbnail form, they will be more obvious. So you can see there's a, if I get it a bit closer, you can see the line in the grass. Grass is pretty good at belying it. So again, it's a combination of sound and light frequency that creates a shape or a line or a circle in nature. And you don't get circles in nature normally. Another pareidolia image, nose, mouth, chin. There's a little beady eye there. This is a good example because this is in a courthouse in Wollonga in South Australia. Now, courthouses, arenas, hospitals, churches, as I said before, Freemasonic lodges, they're all built on the crossing points of ley lines for a reason, particularly courts, because we know that courts are not really about law or justice. So there was that pareidolia image as a highlight of the fact that this is a portal space, again, cited by a Freemason to create the court space. So we've got the Freemasonic logo at the top. And this very twisted tree, I think it's an almond tree. It's on the same property, not far from the courthouse. So where you have large portal spaces, you get this twisting vortex energy. This is not normal for a tree to grow like this. This tree's twisted around multiple times as it's grown up. Very unusual. So again, these are some of the markers that you'll find, as in marked trees, as in the chapter that Alfred Watkins has in his book on the old straight track, that you can see some of the signs that you might be in a portal or a ley crossing space. This is a beautiful example. Unka, one of my course members, shared this. It's called the Witch's Grove. Now, as she explained, these trees, if you take a seed from these trees and grow them in a different landscape, they don't grow like this. This is an example of trees being very twisted and misshapen because of the frequency, the telluric currents, the Leys in the area. There's multiple photos that she shared, and you can see the same ley in the same spot, but at different angles. So that, sometimes it's just shown on the leaves, sometimes it's what's behind, actually where the forest is. So it's a good example of seeing them in multiple different places, from multiple different angles in the same spot. So, and I've got a comparison at the end of showing these shots. And sorry, I'm speaking so quickly. I probably can't see that because of my thing down the bottom. Now, did I have a comparison? I must have, but it must have, hang on, it must be, here we go. Okay. So in these shots, and I realize it's small, but the thumbnail versions can be best, you can see in different spots where it is. Close. Might be able to see it a bit more close. So this is the way that you want to take your photographs. If you want to prove that you're looking at a ley line, take multiple shots from different angles and then go back and see if you can actually see the circles. Okay. Now I did have something there that I wanted to show. Oh, that's what she's talking about, the trees and how if you grow the trees elsewhere. I mean, look at the shapes of these trees. It's a very weird growth system. And again, it's because either they don't like being in the ley lines, or it just affects the growth in some way, or they're trying to avoid them, or mark them out intentionally. So in Australia, we have what's called Bora rings. There are other different names for them as well. These are old ceremonial sites. Some are still being used, where original peoples used to do their ceremony. They are usually the crossing of major ley lines and a big portal space, and they're usually marked as a ring. So there's a portal here that can be seen. With the portals and the very large leys, and it's trial and error to work out. This is an image that I got off the internet, so I couldn't actually sit there and do a 360 and see where all the ley lines fed in to see whether or not this is just a fat ley line or a portal. Sometimes it's not clear if it's one or the other. But the bigger these frequencies are, and these channels are, the more squashed they become as far as the circle is concerned. So there's, I don't know why that is. I've noticed that with some of the sacred sites as well, but the portals are more sort of squashed, elliptical, than a perfect circle, the bigger that they get. This is the Mount Macedon cross. Now, Mount Macedon is right near to Hanging Rock, and there's Straws Lane that goes along just past Hanging Rock, and there's a whole folklore around that, a lot of very interesting stuff that's been written about it. A woman called I think her surname's Lindsay, did the Picnic at Hanging Rock book. It sounds to me like she was an MK Ultra victim. I've done a dig on this with Dale Holmes on his channel, so if anybody's interested in having a look at that, I think we called it something like Hanging Rock, something along those lines. And again, I wouldn't have noticed this unless a course member pointed this out to me. So that was Damien. So there's a big fat ley that goes down to the cross. Now, again, where you have these monuments for fallen soldiers, as we now know, wars are all big, massive satanic rituals. So they'll have the crossing point. They'll have a big monument in a crossing point, because what do people do when they go to these places? They feel misery, they feel loss, they feel depressed. And that's another way of harnessing that really negative frequency. By the way, cemeteries, hospitals, hospices are all in the crossing point of Leys as well, in the portal spaces. This is a naturally forming circle at Hanging Rock, which has some really interesting anomalies with it. And that's the plinth. So this is the cross at Mount Macedon, just down from Hanging Rock. So where you see circles in masonry, it's not easy to create a circle in masonry. It's much easier to create square or a rectangle. They do this for a reason. It's marking a portal space. So that in itself is a portal. And that's why they've marked it as a big circle. And it's really weird because there's actually there's a big sword on the cross as well. It's very odd. This is a Bora ring again. It's been marked with rocks. This is Avebury Stone Circle, another great big circle. So what you've got there is a massive portal, massive portal. I cannot imagine why anybody would want to live in that space. I would imagine that they would have a great deal of activity. There must be so many manifestations in those homes. It's a crazy place to live. So this is Stonehenge, again, massive circle being pointed out. So it's a big portal space, crossing of Leys. This is in Peru. This is in Chaco in New Mexico. So these are all sacred sites and they're all circular. Delphi. So again, in masonry, it's harder to make a circle. They do it for a reason. So in the course, I actually show where the portal is, but there is a massive portal and it's quite squashed in this space. And you can see a whole series of ley lines coming in, and there's a pareidolia image of a face. I'll just try and point that out in this tree. So the tree is in itself in a ley that feeds into this portal space, but you can see two eyes, two horns maybe, nose, downturned mouth, chin with a cleft, cheek. So some people might be able to see it better than others. This is the Vatican. Again, it's a massive portal space. You've got ley lines being marked. Again, we're not supposed to know about these things, but there's your ley lines marked as they come into a piezoelectric stone. So you'll see they will bring in specific stones that have piezoelectric qualities so they can transmit frequency. And at the very top, copper, the most transductive element on Earth. So there's a reason for that. So this portal, this is an example of a portal that goes way underground because it's so big. And my very good friend Max Lowen has described the satanic rituals, child sacrifice that she's witnessed underneath this space. She's just one of the ones that's spoken about it publicly. I know multiple survivors who've witnessed the same in the sublevels of the Vatican. This is a Freemasonic lodge in Jesselton. And again, this would be a sky lay or sky portal. So they call them stargates. So you can also get, although I think the stargates are supposed to be like cylinders straight upwards, but that's a very unusual thing to create in a building. It's marking a portal space or a massive ley line. And again, the Freemasons always build these structures on the crossing point of a ley line. So they always site with a sighting rod a ley line before they build them. Another arena. So this is a bullfighting arena. It's a circle for a reason. It's marking out the portal. So, and again, so this is the Melbourne Cricket Ground. Looks like a massive eye, even to the point where they've done an avenue of trees to make it look like the outer aspect of the eye. If you look at this area, there's some other really interesting topographical features. And this one's in Sydney. This is the Accor Stadium. You've got Haslam's marker here. This is a human-built version of, say, Silbury Hill. Again, Silbury Hill in the UK is also human-built, similar dimensions. You've got your striations that look like a rising sun, which is a nod to ancient Egypt. You've got the word ibis in the street name. So this is obviously a crossing point of many portals in the same place. There must be a lot of crossing points of Leys in this particular area, and this is why they've got their stadiums there. So they do this to harness energy. And when you think about what happens in a stadium, you'll have big rock concerts, you'll have competitive games, which are kind of, I'm not bagging sport, but it's a distraction from what's really important in my eyes, because I believe spirituality is a very important aspect of life. I'm not bagging people. It's okay to have an outlet just to have some fun and enjoy yourself. But sports in these spaces, it's about competition. It's about one person winning over another. It's about worship of the people who play. It's not spiritual. It's not, yeah, it lacks that. And they want that focus on competition, on fighting, on winning over one another. And that's another one. They call it oracle, oracle as in eye. They're not even trying to hide it. And that one's almost owl-like. So castles are also built on the crossing point of ley lines and portals. So there's quite a fat one feeding into this castle space. And I've just got a few examples of that. So as I go through, I'll go backwards and forwards so people might be able to actually pick up on where the leys are. These aren't the best examples. I've got some much better ones. These are just taken from the internet. This one's interesting. So this is an old church. There's quite an obvious ley in this one. But what's even more interesting is the apparition. Now, I don't know if this was done intentionally because I just got this off the internet, but there's a face on the gravestone, 2 eyes, nose, mouth. It may have been put on there on purpose because it's obviously a very creepy photograph, but yeah, just want to show that one because it's interesting. This is the Devil's Tower, and you can see quite a fat ley moving into that space. And again, don't worry if you can't see these ones. I've got better examples coming up, but you can see a beautiful circle coming in. And this is what you'll just see, these weird circles, and you just think, why is there a circle there? This is in Kyrgyzstan. I don't know if I pronounced that properly. I thought this was interesting. It's not as obvious as some of the other leys, but they've got this weird structure on the actual rock face, which is in a line with that particular ley line. So it probably travels up the rock. So this is some of the pareidolia imagery that you'll see. So Nia, one of my chat group members, mentioned or shared this one. So it's almost like a pharaoh in the rock. You'll see a lot of rocks will show also some really interesting imagery. This again is Castle Hill in New Zealand, which looks a bit like the Sphinx face. There's a lot of really interesting pareidolia imagery on Castle Hill, and Castle Hill's known to have a lot of ley lines and portals. This one looks like a wolf. There's someone standing with the head in the mouth. This is an image that I took on Shelley Beach in Middleton in South Australia. I haven't been able to see it again, I haven't been able to find it again. So on this particular day, the lighting was such that I could see it. And I've drawn in what I can see. It's like an Indigenous man in the rock. So there's another face in rock there. I'm racing through this, guys, because this is a lot of stuff that I want to share. I want to make sure I do it in time. Eagle Rock, this is shared by Jim Williams. Another one of Jim's, a face in the rock. This is an interesting reptilian one. This was from Wendy, one of my current course members. It's Turtle Rock, so you can see a turtle's face and an arm there. This is beautiful. So, and again, you know, when we're talking about so-called pareidolia imagery, it is incredibly insulting. This is a sacred space. This is a very sacred spot. I think it's somewhere in the South America, but I'm not 100% sure. But from different angles, you can see it's so like a human face, and it's sacred to these people for a reason. It's a representation of a spirit of nature. This is a face that you can see in a rock at Hanging Rock. Again, what I mentioned before, near Mount Macedon. And it was so significant that it was actually in a news article. So news.com has got an article on it where they show the face on the rock. So mass media finds this interesting as well. That stone circle that I showed before, that was actually at Hanging Rock. This is one of the images within it. It's almost like a skull, and I've actually marked it. I don't know if it's, yeah, you can see. So original peoples found significance in this imagery. Hanging Rock has got some really, really weird, intense energies. One of my course members pointed out there's an eye above. So the Hanging Rock actually has a ley line running beneath it. It's plain as day. Someone pointed out there's actually an eye apparition just above where the ley goes through. So that's where the ley actually goes through. And you can see the circle in the space. This was shared by one of my course members of a grotto on the Great Ocean Road, which apparently the Great Ocean Road follows a really powerful ley line. I haven't been able to get out there and take photographs myself, but as again, you know, you've got a humanoid apparition there. This was shared by Brad. This is a ley line running through. Now you can see quite a clear circle there, and it reverberates out. Often when I would take these photographs, or when people go out and take them, I encourage them, you know, I won't necessarily acknowledge, yeah, okay, you've got a ley there unless I can see it in more than one space or one place along that ley. This one's quite clear. So again, it's a circle where there shouldn't be a circle. This one's spectacular. So this is an example of a tree avoiding, the plants are avoiding this circular space. It's not as obvious from this angle, but when you get back, you can see this beautiful circle. No reason for it to be there. There's the path or the water course, whatever this is. And then you can see it marked in two places. So you can see the refraction of light creating a circle there as well. This was a Roman road, I believe, originally. And you can see it in multiple places. This was shared by Mo. Thank you, Mo. It's beautiful dogs in the pic. Many faces. So where you see squares or rectangles in these pictures, that's where I'm pointing out there are humanoid apparitions. This is someone's built a cairn here. A cairn being a group of rocks or a little pile of rocks. And there's actually a ley running through in this space. So this is from Yvonne. So I'll just go backwards and forwards because some of these are subtle and some of them are really obvious. To me, this one's really obvious. So someone has worked out, there's a ley crossing in this spot. They probably had dowsing rods or something, and they've actually stuck a stick on the top to point out the direction of the ley line. I'm assuming that's why they put it there, because it's really quite clear in those shots, especially that one's really clear. So this is Boscawen Un, probably not pronouncing it that right, in Cornwall. A woman called Jane shared this for Ley Love Down. She and Ben put it on the channel. So Ben Hawkes is the co-founder for Ley Love Down, along with myself. So another standing circle, standing stone circle. And again, all of these stones that you see in these places are piezoelectric. They hold frequency. They're probably full of quartz. Some of the ones, so the ones at Stonehenge were shipped over from like 500k or 500 mile away. So they brought particular rocks. They had to be specific rocks to go into the stone circle because of the frequency that they carry. And again, the pineal gland in the brain has clear quartz crystals in it. So quartz is a repository for Akashic information. It helps us to pick up on Akashic information. So the Akashic being past, present, future events, actions, thoughts on Earth, everything that's ever been and ever will be is already implanted in the Akashic record. So that's our pineal gland is our Wi-Fi for picking up on that information. And that's what psychics use when they tell you about what they can see for you in the future. Now, these are from this footage that Jane gave us. You can see the ley lines between the rocks in many of these spaces. I thought this one was really lovely and quite clear. So you can see in the grass tends to belie it quite well. You don't get too much confusion. There's another one here. One that you can see in two spots here. I'll go backwards and forwards again. That last one was good, so I'll go back and forwards with that one as well. Yeah, I'm racing, guys, because I don't want to take up too much time. And this one as well. So thank you, Jane. Done a great job there. So my suggestion would be if you get to visit any of these places, take as many photos as you can, look at them in thumbnail form. So, get them in a folder and look at them from a distance and see if you can see any circles in there, and then look up closer and see if you can see it and mark it. There's various different apps that you can use to mark these circles out. I love this example. This is a friend's dog running along a ley line. There's a water course next to it, which is highlighting. So where you see water and leys together, you'll get a heightened frequency for the ley. It'll be more obvious. And you'll get a lot more apparitions as well. There's actually a face here as well. Sorry, my speaker just decided to turn itself off. All right, so that's where the ley is in that direction. Very clear down the bottom there. And in the opposite direction, you can see it again, and roughly the same sort of volume. You're seeing the same sort of size. It's another sign that you're not just picking up some, nebulous stimulus. It's actually a ley line. And there's a comparison for people. So this one in particular is really clear. It's beautiful. Okay. As with most psychic stuff, it's not bells and whistles. It's subtle. This is Jim Williams again. I absolutely adore this particular photograph. It's spectacular. So Jim has an affinity with animals, and this dingo literally stood in this ley line to show him that it was a ley. And there's a path that goes through here. So again, it continues on. And there's the comparison. So you can see it again more clearly when you have it in thumbnail form. Okay. A lot of roads, a lot of paths, a lot of roads were originally leys. So if you've got a really wooded area and you want to build a road through it, you're going to go through the path of least resistance. You'll go for something that's already been walked. Okay. And again, thank you to all of the course members who've let me share this. So this one's beautiful because you can see it quite clearly the way the trees are trying to avoid growing within it. This is from Dale Holmes. There's a quartz seam in Bendigo in this beautiful area that he would often go for walks and talks in. And I'd keep saying, Dale, there's a ley line behind you. And he's like, he was always nice about it, but he just like, don't know what you're talking about, until he actually saw them after I showed him some stuff. So, I mean, that's a beautiful example. And there's two in this one. There's actually multiple, but the two that I've marked are the most obvious. Because this is being recorded, people can go back and look again. This is from Anita. Again, great example because we've got, it's a sand dune. You could walk across the sand dune at any point, and yet the path goes through the trees, and the trees are avoiding that particular space. And that reminds me of, so I'll just get that so you can get a bit of a clearer image. Again, in thumbnail, it's clearer. This reminds me of Dita's picture because it's very similar. Again, just a circle where you wouldn't expect to see a circle. This is a really good example of multiple leys feeding into a portal space. So if you notice this area in the front here, there's nothing growing. So this would be a Bora ring space. I know the Sikhs used to have this area as a place where they would send their dead off to the other world. So I believe they would do cremation ceremonies in this area, but it was clearly already like a Bora ring site or a ceremonial site anyway. So this is what you'll see in Bora ring sites. You will see multiple Leys all feeding into a portal. So our original people knew all about this stuff. And that's the portal itself. And again, thumbnail form, you can see it a little bit more clearly. Okay, how are we going for time? All right. So we're getting close to finishing. This is from Kylie. It's a beautiful example again. And again, no one's going out there with brush cutters to clear these spaces and make these perfect circles in these spaces. When you go out for a walk in nature, there's some other force apart from people walking through or animals walking through and maybe brushing against the leaves that creates these perfect cylindrical paths. And not all ley lines are straight. As Alfred Watkins speaks in his book, they can be serpentine, and that is my experience. They can wander along the landscape. So they're affected by quartz seams, they're affected by granite, they're affected by, power lines can interfere with them. So there are many different forces that all sort of bring this together. That's in the opposite direction. This is from Sue. This is a really good example because it's from a distance, and then closer up on a different day, different time, in the same spot. So if you use that as the marker, that tree, you can see it in the same spot. And this is lovely. So dawn and dusk, they'll be clearer. So this one's quite clear in this particular picture. And again, dawn and dusk. So if you want to find a ley line and you want to be, really capture it well, you'll capture it at that time of the day. This is from Mark Fagan. Mark's in my current course. He's produced some incredible imagery. This is from Annette. This is a Roman road in Perthshire in Scotland. So you don't just get Roman roads in England, you get them in Scotland as well. And this is the last image that I wanted to share, which is a spectacular pareidolia image. This is an entity that Alicia, who's in my course at the moment, felt she wanted to look in one direction to look at the waterfall, but something kept calling her back to look in this direction. So for those who can't see it, there is a massive humanoid face here, actually within a portal. And this is what, again, I guess you would describe as a stargate. So some ley lines go underground. Some ley lines, the ones that I photographed, tend to be on the surface, hovering about 1.5 inches off the ground, 2 inches off the ground, and nothing will grow within them. But you get these other spaces where you'll get a portal way up high. And again, like I said, in the UK and other places, you see where they would build tumps and mounds to bring the surface up to that portal space for use in whatever ways that they would want to use it. So there's 2 major layers coming in and a portal space, and then that's the face itself. So you've got an eye, bridge of the nose, nostril, mouth is open. So if I go back again, you might be able to see it again in that original photograph. It's spectacular. And again, these entities, the reason that we will see these entities in these spaces is they want us to know that the ley lines are important. They want us to engage. So to me, this is like a cry. It's not a cry of pain. It's like a cry of hello. Original peoples know all about this. Western people who are doing most of this damage don't recognize that they just, they get up in the morning, they go to work, they do their stuff, they come home, they watch the television, they're not engaged, they're not seeing the real world around them. We're in an energetic war, and we need to be focused on healing and balancing what others before have done. And obviously, from my perspective, I'm more intent on that than most people, because of my experiences. And so this is the Ley Love Down project that I have with Ben. We're just encouraging people to get out. If you can't sing, don't worry, play music in those spaces. If you don't want to play music, get a healing 432 hertz tuning fork. You can just chime the tuning fork in that area, or a 528 hertz tuning fork. You can do that as well. You could take sticks out, didgeridoo, play a drum or something if you feel comfortable doing that. Dance. If the whole idea is to have the intent, though, the intent of balancing and healing the ley line. That's all you need. Positive intent, some sort of sound frequency to engage, and you'll make a difference. And so that's the mission. It's not difficult, and I have high hopes for this. I think we're already making a difference. We're having meditations on a regular basis now, so it is making a difference. We just need more people to engage. And by the way, there's no cost. It's all free. Nobody has to pay any money. It's not about money or anything like that. But this is my shameless plug at the end for the Cosmic Consciousness Conference. So, as I mentioned before, Uluru is in the crossing point of two dragon lines, the two of the biggest frequency or most powerful frequency ley lines on the Earth. So Uluru is right in a portal space. At the end of this year, when the conference is playing, it's the summer solstice for us in Australia. It is also the marking point for the ley lines harmonising permanently, which is an extremely significant event. And this is something that Rory Duff has spoken about. He's a geobiologist. It's his book that I mentioned earlier is talking about ley lines, his guide to ley lines. This is a major event coming into permanent harmony time. Normally, the harmony time for ley lines is at the equinoxes and solstices. It might last hours or days. Then it started lasting for long periods, like 45 days. We're coming into it permanently. And what that means is that the veil that normally would stop people from being able to see otherworldly entities, that would stop them from having engagement with past life experiences, which would prevent them from being able to have communications with souls on the other side, that is disintegrating. So the children that are being born now will never have the veil. They'll never have that block. Part of the reason why we've been absolutely infused with fluoride and bromine in bread is also bad. It also clouds the pineal. So this is a significant event. So if you want to go up there, you're welcome to do so. Lots of amazing people speaking there. All right, guys, I will stop sharing and stop speaking for a moment.
Amazing, Rachel. We've got a bunch of questions in the side. Juanita's question was, how do the dark entities attach to humans to cause them to do bad things?
Right. So we all have an aura. So our aura is our soul that doesn't fit in the body. In fact, the soul usually uses the body like a puppet through the chakras and meridians. If our aura, so there's a shield around the outer edge of the aura. So the aura is usually about 2 to 3 feet outside of the body, like a big egg around us of energy. If that outer shield is permeable, if we are depressed, we have negative emotions, if we're grieving, it can be permeated. So it can mean that something can attach and it will just simply come into your energy system and feed off your energy. And it can have influence. So it can make you act out of sorts. You could be angrier, more aggressive. You see this a lot with alcoholics. Their personality will change completely because something has taken over. And so they're not conscious. Something else is conscious and taking over.
And do you think when you put into a good sort of area, say the festival where you've got all that love, you've got all the rest of it, when things are working through or attached to people, that often that has to react, because there's a bit of a chat afterwards of where people had different experiences as well, and also experiences of things going wrong after the festival, like Nick's computer, 2 of his computers died, and these things, and it's like a reaction to doing something positive can also be these little things going wrong as well. Is there anything to that?
So in Nick's example, perhaps he got to a higher frequency. And the higher frequency we are on a soul level, the more we will interfere with electronic equipment, and it can be really annoying. So that could be an example of that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an attack. It can mean that, people can turn lights on and off when they get to a high enough frequency. There's a level of telekinesis that can come in. So that can be very annoying. I suggest orgone in those situations. If you're someone who interferes with your equipment a lot, orgone pyramids or something like that around the devices will protect them to a degree. Exactly what you said, if you've got someone who's got an attachment in a space like that with all those other people with positive intent, they will be very reactive and they probably won't have a very nice time. As you get to higher and higher frequencies on a soul level, the people around you that would normally be someone that you would interact with in a positive level, if they have an attachment or if they cannot get up to your frequency, they will be reactive to you. And we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. There's lots of reasons why people are reactive now. We've all got PTSD from the last 4 years for starters. But yeah, the higher frequency you get, you will be like it's like a wake up to people that they're not doing their job, not their job. They're not doing what they came here to do on a soul level. So when you've got someone who's actually activated and doing what they're here to do on a soul level, but the people around them just want to keep watching the TV and being programmed, there will be a lot of reactivity as well. So I hope that answers the question. Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the chat again. It was something along the lines of having a purge afterwards. There was some family who reacted, those sorts of things, and so potentially they may or may not be there. And if they have an experience of elevation or difference, then I guess the entity or the spirit or their aura or whatever is reacting to those others, and can also be in a negative way in the fact that they don't. To me, they don't want them to be elevated. They don't want them to have that experience, and
Yeah.
so you can often have negative experiences from others who want that. Is that an accurate?
It is. It is. So when you've got a group of people, like-minded people, having a festival like the intent is for awakening. The intent of a festival like that one was for people to come up levels, and that's what would have happened. And so when you return from that, you're not the same. You're in a higher frequency. So people are going to be reactive. Pets might even be reactive because your frequency has changed. It doesn't mean you've necessarily got a negative attachment or anything like that. It just means you've got to a higher frequency. So, people coming back from that, if they'd left their partner behind, they might then not be able to sleep very comfortably in the bed next to their partner because their partner might be a lower frequency and drain them. Because your aura, when you sleep next to someone, your auras are immersed within one another. And there's an attempt at homeostasis. So one person, if they're at a lower level on a soul frequency level, will drain the other and they won't get much sleep. The lower level person will be, they won't be able to sleep properly. The higher level person won't be able to wake up the next day without feeling really drained. Everything's energy exchange.
Do you think that you mentioned something about the children, and there was a question in there from Nat talking about if children are able to see these things easier as they're growing up because they haven't had, I guess, the programming or the deprogramming. And also, do you think that potentially generationally now, our children that are coming through now are going to find that easier and easier?
Yeah. So whether the adults of the world want to be spiritual or not, this next generation will be all about spirit, proper healing, true education, true justice. So we have got we have the most exceptional souls on the planet coming through now. And I think that's part of the reason why we've had this thing that has made so many people lose their babies because the next generation is so spectacular. So we saw this, whether or not you believe Jesus Christ was a real person or was a metaphor, King Herod killed all the male babies because males had the power at that time, at a time where there was a massive influx of gold soul frequencies. Jesus Christ being, Christ consciousness being a version of those gold soul frequencies. So again, I'm not saying that it's definitely happened in the past. I believe that he was a real person, but I don't believe he was a god. I think he was an embodiment, and I'm going to get some flack for this, but he was the embodiment of what a gold soul can do. Gold soul frequencies are spectacular, and a lot of people are getting to that level right now. So most children are born psychic. Usually around about the age of 5, the veil will descend and they'll stop having these otherworldly experiences. But most children will describe, they will see things. They will see significance in things that adults then make them feel foolish for saying. Psychology will make them feel crazy about. And so they then hide their impressions and it just gets squashed and squashed and squashed. Plus the veil descends. And that's partly because we're not supposed to remember everything from our past lives because we can't live our lives if we know that our other family that we just left exists a few kilometers away or in another country. That's very debilitating. So that's another reason why the veil exists, but it's disintegrating. We don't really have it anymore. I estimate that by the end of this year, when the permanent harmony time comes in, the veil won't be there at all. So we're going to have a lot more people having these impressions and experiences, which is another reason why I'm speaking about it. It's not schizophrenia. It's not psychosis. It's not crazy. It's psychic. It's the world is fascinating. It's magical.
One of the questions, what is the best way to protect yourself when visiting the ley lines with the intent to heal? Do you need to be protected?
Yes, you do. Yeah, so we have a protocols for getting out on the ground meeting coming up on the 17th for Ley Love Down if people want to join that. And we've got a setting of intent that people can use, and it's just a couple of paragraphs that you can use, just a setting of intent for protection. Because again, some of these spaces have been used for some really horrific things, and so we've got to be careful that we use the right intent as we go in for protection. As I said before, our greatest tool is our intent. So if we have the intent to be protected, and if we're confident with that, it will work.
One of the questions in here, is there anything that can be done with people who are reactive? And as we sort of mentioned at the moment, there's people becoming more reactive as these things are becoming more obvious, and there's a more spiritual advancement in what's going on. Is there anything we can do as to act as a peace buffer or to help them with, what they're going through?
So part of the reactivity is that soul contracts are also dissolving. So what we've come into this lifetime to do, and the people we're supposed to be interacting with on those soul contracts are dissolving. So the reason for being in relationships and having friendships are dissolving also. So some of those people will need to let go of each other. This is not the case for parents and children, that there's always a responsibility for children, from parents, but for, some relationships are going to go by the wayside, unfortunately. I keep seeing this going on. The other thing is to encourage them to do what makes their heart sing. So while we're not dealing with karmic attachments like we used to, we still have come here to get to this free will time, because we're coming up to 1,000 years of free will. In that free will time, we can do whatever we feel is right for us, as long as it's altruistic. If we're running around doing a Crowley, we're going to go to hell. You have to do what's right. But if you can think of what it is that makes your heart sing and actually fulfill that purpose in life, these people will be less reactive. So encourage them to do what makes them happy, what makes them joyful. And for most people, it's helping in some way. It's healing work. It's cleaning, clearing, healing, true justice, learning natural law, all of those things, getting out into community, singing together, all of those things will bring those people to a higher frequency and make them less reactive. So try not to be reactive against them. That's the best thing, because that's not going to help. It's just going to cause fights.
This is a picture sent in the chat, and they're asking, have they pictured a ley line?
It's possible. It's very, very possible. I tried to keep away from reflections because you can get a false ley because you've got a reflection that looks just like a circle. I mean, that is absolutely stunning and it looks just like one. And given the bow of that tree, yes, it could be. But I do tend to keep away from reflections in water because, again, you can just get circle after circle after circle after circle, and it's really hard to tell. In this circumstance, because it seems to be traveling through and there's an opening in the bush at the end, yeah, I would get up to that end and take some photographs and see if there's actually a path there, because that would be the indicator of whether or not that is actually a ley that's continuing on.
All right, good. I'm just heading down the questions. Yeah, so someone's just confirming the children, babies born now are so aware. What else? Yeah, lots of babies being stillborn from jib mamas. So very sad. Research and midwife saying that the placenta is only working at half strength.
Amazing woman, her fertility expert called Sophia Bassiotto, whom I know, who's been doing a series of interviews on this, and she knows that this is what's going on. But just because it's happened doesn't mean it can't be healed. Anything that happens in the human body can be healed, and we will find ways to heal this.
Yeah. So thank you, Rachel. With your guidance, I've discovered a ley line running along the creek line of my property, and I feel the energy change as I walk across it. I took photos and the circles show up as well. Thank you, Rachel. So excited now. I understand more as I go into nature where I feel so good. So you're suggesting, I guess, as a follow-up to that, go out to nature, start looking for these things, look for the faces, look for feeling, and just try to, I guess, somewhat train those intuition sort of feelings of if things change, and look around and try to be more aware of your surroundings. Is that what you're suggesting?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, that's the key, getting out into nature, because we're surrounded by concrete. You can see ley lines in urban environments. It's just much more difficult. That's where dowsing can be really useful. Um, but yeah, get out in nature because it's healing. It's healing to be in nature, and we are healing nature by being in nature. Gentleman called Clint Walker in the Sky to Earth series describes, um, country gets lonely for people. So we are the custodians of this planet. We are supposed to be doing this work to heal her. This is why original cultures have always done their ceremonies in these spaces. I'm talking the good ones, their Bora ring ceremonies and the rest. It's just that it's been co-opted and turned into something dark by secret societies that want power. So if we can get out into nature with this beautiful intent to share the images that we're seeing, get out there and sing, share the videos of yourself singing in those spaces. You don't have to be trained to sing. It's about the intent of bringing in a beautiful frequency and feeling love for the earth and wanting to heal and balance those ley lines. And we can't just expect the dwindling numbers of Aboriginal people to keep doing this work on their own. And they've been doing it forever.
I guess so. I'm just having a look. I think we've covered most of the questions. I would like to bring you back to Hanging Rock, because I've heard through testimony of those who have been forced into different sacrifice type stuff, that those sorts of places are used as well. And a lot of people talk about feeling like quite a dark energy when they go to somewhere like that. Would you recommend going to somewhere like that with the right intent and trying to overcome that energy? Or do you think that that's more for people that are more trained in that? Would you gather a group together? What would you suggest when you know that there's certain locations that are being used for bad, that you try to overcome it?
So with Ley Love Down, we recommend that people go out in numbers. So you can go out to these places on your own if you're powerful. If you have strength and conviction in your intent to be protected, you can go out on your own. If you're a shaman or somebody who's got, who's a healer, who can work with energies and knows themselves well, but it's recommended to go out in numbers. So one or two is great, but 5 or 6 is better. 10, 20 is even better. And if you do that, even if you're not again, trained vocalist, humming together in harmony, that will make your heartbeats synchronized. That would create an incredibly healing frequency to go into those layers. So if I went to Hanging Rock, I'd go up to that stone circle that I showed, that there's an apparition of a skull in there, and the sad face. That's the spot that needs the healing. And a lot of people don't know there's Straws Lane that goes along between Mount Macedon and Hanging Rock, and it's got a massive ley line along it. You can see it, and cars will actually get magnetically pulled uphill. And I actually had someone, I knew I was on the money because someone actually came into my Rumble channel to have a rah, rah, rah at me. I mean, apparently I'm compromising all of the work that I've done in the past about, exposing all these pedophiles, which has been validated by the major crime department. But by talking about Straws Lane, apparently it's not magnetic. Well, there's magnetic hills in various places across the world that have this anomaly. And it's a real thing. And I know people on the ground who've actually gone out to Straws Lane and they've said, your car gets pulled uphill. It's not a visual illusion. So I mean that whole area is extremely significant. For them to put that massive cross up at Mount Macedon on a big circular plinth, they're pointing at a massive portal there. Some of the aerial shots that I share in the dig that I did with Darwell Holmes, you can see the portal there. It's massive. Yeah.
Amazing. All right, coming up for time. So any last sort of plugs that you want to give? You've obviously got a website there as well. Do you want to just talk about your website, where else people can find you?
Yeah, so if people want to find me, if they're interested in doing a course, or if they want to see my links to my other platforms, I'm at sixthscience.com. So number 6th science, or one word.com.
And Tom, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, that was awesome, Rachel. There's a lot of good feedback in the comments too. So a lot of the questions I know you've answered several times. So if people just go ahead and follow your work on Telegram and that, a lot of that you'll get the answers to.
Thank you. Cheers, guys. Thanks heaps.
Thanks, Rachel. We'd love to have you back at some stage. So please stay in contact.
Awesome. Love to. That'd be great.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Guys.